What's going on, everyone? Welcome to High PSI TV. Today we are going to install a Banks Derringer on an L5P Duramax. So we've got Martin's truck in the shop right now. Martin's truck is pretty much stock except for a little bit of suspension modification, and we have done an S&B cold air intake on it as well. So here we have all the parts laid out, what comes with the Derringer setup, and this is without the optional gauge. So all this is going to have is a switch. So we have our owner's manual, a couple harnesses here. This is our switch that goes inside the cab. And then we have an interface here as well. So I've read over the instruction book real quick, and I'm gonna make this video short and sweet, so I'm gonna get working on the truck right now. All right, as always, the first step in doing anything electrical under the hood of your truck is you wanna disconnect your batteries. If you don't, what you'll end up with is a check engine light for your map sensor and your fuel rail pressure sensor, and it'll actually put the truck in reduced engine power, so be sure that you disconnect your batteries first before you do anything under the hood. All right, guys, so looking through the instruction manual here on this Banks setup, you can see that the pictures aren't really that good, and that's why I'm making this video. Kind of a step-by-step. We'll follow along with the instruction book and work under the hood of the truck so that you can get a little bit better of an idea where everything is located and what you're gonna have to do to install this system. So looking through the instructions, it looks pretty simple. The first thing that we have to do is go up in the engine bay and remove our cold air intake. All right, so like I said a minute ago, Martin has this S&B cold air intake on the truck that we put on a couple of months ago. If you have a stock intake on your truck, similar kind of situation, you're going to undo your clamp at your turbo inlet, undo your clamp at your box, and then pull the box and the inlet tube out of the truck, remembering to disconnect your mass airflow sensor. All right, as you can see, once you have the air box and the inlet tube removed, you get a little bit more room to work in here. Always be sure to cover up open holes with clean rags. That way you don't drop a screwdriver down into your turbo and bad things happen after that. The next step is we have to disconnect our intercooler outlet temperature sensor, which is right here. If you don't have a panel popping tool, be sure you invest in one because you'll be using it a lot on this project. All right, so what we're gonna be doing now is we're gonna be removing the intercooler outlet duct from the throttle body. There's a bolt here right next to your fan shroud, and then we're going to pull this harness out of the way too, so we have a little bit more room to get to the locking ring, and I'll show you how that works in just a second. Alright, so here we have our gray locking ring with our coupler underneath it. So what you need to do is take your locking ring and rotate it clockwise 10 degrees, just like that. And then you can grab the tube under the throttle body and start twisting, and it should pull right down and off your throttle body just like that. Also remember, after you remove your tube, to cover it up with a clean rag so you don't drop anything down the hole. Okay, so in the instructions for the Derringer, it tells you that there is a fuel rail pressure sensor behind the throttle body here, and that if you undo the harness from all of its mounting tabs, you should be able to get to it, but I can't see it to show it to you. So an option is to remove the throttle body, which is what I'm going to do real quick, just to make it easier for you guys to see the fuel rail pressure sensor and how to disconnect it. Okay, now that we have the throttle body removed, I'm trying to put as much light on this situation as I can so that you guys can see where this connector is. Throttle body is disconnected, and the fuel rail pressure sensor is right here. It's got 4 wires and a red locking tab, and it's right at the end of the fuel rail. So I would recommend removing the throttle body. It makes this a lot easier to get to. And they say that you need to replace the gasket. It's a thin metal gasket. If there's no damage to it, I don't see any need in replacing it. Just put it all back together. So this is the connector that we're looking for. We just need to disconnect it now. Okay, so back over here on the table, this is going to be the first harness that we install. You can see it's just a piggyback. So you have your map sensor here and your fuel rail pressure sensor here. So this is manifold absolute pressure, just so you guys know. So what they tell you to do is first plug this in and then route the harness along the stock harness and zip tie it into place. So you're going to plug this into your fuel rail pressure sensor, and then that is going to plug into your stock harness. All right, so we've started routing the Derringer harness in between the intake horn here, the alternator, and it just comes up behind the alternator. And the next step is to plug into our map sensor on the intake horn with the Derringer pigtail harness. All right, we've got our map sensor plugged in. So I'm gonna start zip tying the harness up. And what you wanna be sure is you stay away from this tube right back here. That's part of your EGR. So that'll have exhaust gas and or coolant running through it depending on which part it is, and it can get warm. So be sure that you tie this harness close to the alternator and then across this harness as you go across the engine towards the firewall. We'll go ahead and get our throttle body back on, our intercooler tube on, so that we're not dropping screws and stuff down the intercooler tube, because that would be bad. All right guys, we're getting ready to slide our intercooler tube back on our throttle body. Now the trick with this is you want to make sure that you rotate the locking ring all the way clockwise before you try to slide it on the throttle body. And once you get it seated tight against the throttle body, you turn it back counterclockwise to seat it into place. After you get this seated on here, just reinstall your bolt that connects to your alternator mount, and don't forget to plug your temp sensor back in. All right guys, we got our intercooler tube back on. We'll go ahead and throw our cold air back on it real quick, and then we'll work on the rest of the wiring installation. All right, so we've got the cold air back on, got our harness routed over to the driver's side, then 8-pin connector right here. Now the next step is we need to set up our little interface piece and the rest of our harness. Depending on if you have just the 3-position switch, like this guy, or if you're running the monitor that goes up in your A-pillar, this is going to change a little bit. So we're a 3-position switch, so we're going to run our back cap on this that plugs into our other harness. So this is what our configuration is going to look like under the hood. So our 8-pin harness is going to plug into this side of the interface, have our interface, and then this is the cable that we're going to be running through the firewall. So you can see we've got our harness routed around the master cylinder, around the fuse block. Our interface is zip tied to our hood release cables. Next thing we need to do is get it through the firewall, and there's a couple different options for this. You can drill a hole, but there's a big grommet right behind the fuse box here that we always run all of our wiring through. And on the inside of the truck, if you pull the fuse box cover off, you can see this grommet real easily. So we're just going to go ahead and run the wire through. I'm not going to show you how I do it to try to keep this video short, and then we'll go into wiring everything inside the cab of the truck. All right, so we're inside the truck right now, and what Martin requested is that I mount the switch right here in our kick panel. It's hollow behind here, and he doesn't want to drill a hole in his dash to mount this little switch. So we'll pop this panel out, drill a small hole, and then we'll mount the switch right here. Also, if you look under the dash, we have our fuse block cover here. We're going to pop this off, and I actually prefer to unbolt it from the firewall, and you can see that big grommet that goes through the firewall into the engine bay where we're going to run our wires through. Okay, so this is what it should look like when you have the fuse block unbolted and out of the way. I'm not sure if you can see with this GoPro the grommet in the firewall, but once I get the wires run through, I'll show you how it looks. Okay, we have Martin's switch mounted in his kick panel here, and this is going to be the last of our connections. So there's this little T piece that ties everything together, the switch, the OBD2 connector, and they call this the starter cable. That's the one that comes through the firewall. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop out this side panel. This is just held in with clips, and then we'll plug everything in and fire this thing up, make sure that it's working correctly. Okay, so we have all 3 of our harnesses routed into the little side panel of the dash here. We'll plug it into our little T-Union doodad there. And then that's going to complete this install. I'll finish up this video in just a second. There's our switch, nice out of the way, but Martin should still be able to reach it. No problems there. We'll get the floor mat back in it. Okay, now that everything is complete, what Martin has to do is go and drive the truck. So he's going to drive it for 5 to 10 miles on the stock setting. Then he will go to the plus setting, do the same thing, 5 to 10 miles, stop and go. And then he will go to the sport setting, 5 to 10 miles, just to let the transmission learn the new torque and everything. If you had your battery disconnected, you're also going to want to do this transmission relearn setup. All right, so after you do your 3 drive cycles, your transmission should have enough time to relearn all the new torque that the truck has, and it should start shifting better and better the more you drive it. All right, that's going to conclude the install of the Banks Derringer system on an L5P. Overall, not bad to install. I hope this video helps out because the instruction booklet that's included with the unit isn't the best. The pictures are not that good. So anyway, like I said, the hardest part is probably removing the throttle body and getting to the fuel pressure rail sensor. After that, it's pretty simple. Running all your wiring, connecting your map sensor and all that, mounting the switch. Normal stuff that anyone should be able to do in their garage or out in a field or whatever. We've got about an hour and a half in installing this, and that's with me making a video as well. Be on the lookout for a review video. I'm gonna have Martin drive this truck for about a week, and then he'll get back with me and we'll talk about how the truck's running, fuel mileage differences, power, towing, all that kind of stuff. Martin will pull a Bobcat every once in a while. It's probably the heaviest thing that you pull. So we will get back with you on a review of the Derringer. And also, if you guys have ever wanted to put an S&B intake on your L5P, I will link the video here. We did that a couple of months ago, so check out that install video. And as always, be sure to comment, like, subscribe. I'll try to answer all your questions if you guys want to know anything else about this or anything else about the channel. And if you guys are looking for a Derringer for yourself, any Banks products, diesel products, race products, go fast parts, be sure to contact us at RPM Motorsports. I will put a link in the description below with our phone number and website. Thank you for watching.